Good afternoon. My name is Willeen Dennis Dozier. Many of you have made a huge effort to join us today. On behalf of us all, we are deeply appreciative and offer you our most grateful welcome. Our book club celebrates its 27th anniversary today. As we continue to adapt to the digital age, we invite you to follow us on Facebook at Pride Book Club, Instagram, Pride Book Club Jax, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We welcome you, and we know that you're going to have a good time. Thank you. Okay, we'll now have invocation by Deborah Lewis.
Hello, everyone. May we please bow our heads, take a deep breath as we make the transition into prayer. Father God, we come before you as humbly as we know how to say thank you for another day's journey. Father God, we come asking you to please have mercy upon our souls. Father God, in these uncertain times, we ask you to bless us with obedience and bless us with a mind of safety. Father God, bless those persons who are here, the persons that wanted to be here, and the persons that's on their way. Father God, thank you for Pride Book Club 27th year. Thank you for a place for authors to come, for a platform to share their work. Thank you for those who thought it not robbery to invest in these authors. Thank you so much for Felice and Willeen, who had the vision to create something so Black artists can come together. Thank you so much for the camaraderie that we've shared over these 27 years. Thank you for those who come and have read the book, and thank you for those who come who have not read the book. Thank you so much for the joy that we've shared. These and many, many more blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Hello, I'm Felice Franklin, the co founder of the book club. And in September of 1993, Walene and I attended a book signing for Tina McElroy Ansa. And we saw the large number of African Americans that were there and thought that we should have a platform or have a book club to be able to discuss books, etc., which is what happened. We formed a book club, and originally the book club was just the reading group, did not have an official name. It took us approximately a year to finally determine what the book club name would be. So Pride, people reading for inspiration, discussion, and enjoyment, became our name. The word pride was nominated by Max Anderson, and then we had to determine what pride stood for. We liked the word, but wasn't certain what we wanted it to stand for. So we had a battle over that. And it defeated a name suggested by Greg Miller to call the group We Be Reading, without a G at the end. And that was a hard-fought battle, but pride won. So that is always the humor of our book club, and sometimes we will indicate that we be reading with pride. So somehow we incorporate them when we're being humorous. And we actually meet and have met once a month for 27 years, except this is the first year in which we missed a meeting in April because of the pandemic. So we didn't meet that month, but we've met every subsequent month since then. So we have been meeting consecutively for 27 years. And we are meeting now as we were when we originally began, which is at the home of our members. At one point, we had a north side location, a south side location, and eventually we ended up going back to individuals hosting the meetings at their home or at a business or whatever location they determine. And we read fiction and nonfiction. We also have men and women in our group. And that's always great. One of the things that we often said is we didn't want to have a romance discussion without men in the room in order to find out what the men's side of the story was. Sometimes they think it's great and sometimes they think it's bashing, but either way, we have both men and women in the group. And again, we read fiction and we read nonfiction, and we have a library of all of those books from our inception. There's no financial requirement to be a part. We have a saying that says if you attend one meeting, you are a member. So that is what happens. The only time that there's a cost is in the event that there's some special occasion, such as those who are attending in person. There's a cost for the meal and any other things that may be required. One of the things I like to do is I'd like to thank our hosts for this year. We had Reva Oliver hosting in January in the public library for both February and March. In April, as I indicated, we didn't have a meeting, and then we met via Zoom from May until today, although today is through YouTube, and with the exception of August. So August, we met at American Beach at the home of Marsha Phelps, and we met in person and via Zoom. And our next meetings will be Zoom meetings until we're able to meet as a group in public. One of the things we like to have each year is to look over the year to see what are some of the firsts that happened. And this year, one of the first things that happened in March is that we had former State Senator Tony Hill, who co-facilitated the book, May We Forever Stand, A History of the Black National Anthem. And as I indicated, in April was the first time in 27 years we did not have a meeting. In May and in June, we had meetings, but we didn't discuss a specific book. We wanted to find out how people were feeling, what they were doing with the pandemic, what were their reactions to the death of George Floyd, and what impact it had on them individually, what impact it had on the country and the world. And as I indicated, in August, we had a meeting in person and Zoom. That was our first. And this will be the first time that we are conducting our meeting in a recording studio. We are here at the Media Conclave, and we are just so excited about having the opportunity to be here. It's as if we really have moved to the big times because we have cameras, we have lights. So when they say lights, camera, action, we have all of that today. So for those of you who are looking for someone they don't know, I'm going to say this, that meets your media needs, contact the Media Conclave. And Rahman will be presenting, and he has been here several times, so I'm sure he will give you additional information. And today, as I take my seat, I would like to congratulate the group because we are celebrating the reading of 320 books. So that concludes the history of Pride. As Waleed indicated, we hope that you will follow us and that you will join us and to be a part of our discussion. At this point, I'd like to give the microphone back over to Waleed, who will have an introduction of the author. Or would you prefer for the author to introduce himself? Okay, a change to the program. Because we were going to use the bio that he has in the book, but he will probably tell us about him. He will tell us about himself, but not only will he tell us about himself, he will tell us why he wrote the book, what moved him, who inspired him, and he will actually provide readings, and he will tell us about those poems in which he read. Or he may deviate from any of those things that I just told you. Thank you so much. I present to you Mr. Rahman Johnson.
I was thinking about our yesterdays and digging through the rubble, and to say the least, somebody went through a heck of a lot of trouble. To say that when we look things up that we wouldn't fare too well or possibly come up with totally unreliable pictures of ourselves. So you see, I researched the facts, I mean, such as they are, to shed a bit of light on some, and this is what I got so far. You see, white folks discovered Africa. They claimed it fair and square. They couldn't be robbing nobody because according to them, there was nobody there. and they did things that were interesting. Didn't need no leases or deeds. They appointed someone to make everything legal because of sanction, chivalry, and greed. And when the natives got restless deep in the jungle, why, they would call that guerrilla attack. They had never devised that these folks had finally got wise and decided that they would fight back. And yes, there were masters of hunting and fishing and love and primitive art. And yes, there were masters and folk that dealt with religion, but most of all, courtesy came from the heart. Now, there are other examples galore, I assure you, but if it were all left up to me, I'd swear every time, this version ain't mine. That's why it's called his story. I am honored. I am honored beyond honor because being here with Pride gives me a source of pride today. That poem is something that I heard years ago by my mother, and it was a poem that was written by Gil Scott-Heron, and it was entitled simply History. And it talked about all of the historical context and all of the unique ways that people would try to marginalize people of color in the world. And so that was kind of my first love and understanding of what poetry was in the poetry space. I wanted to find ways to use words to speak to what I was feeling in my soul. And I didn't know that as a kid. I didn't know that. I'm thankful. What Wileen did not tell you is that I myself her brother. I guess maybe I was like a kid brother / nephew, but her mom was my mentor / mother. I do things now. In fact, this is one of the few times, although you all see this still says water on it, I have a phobia now because of Miss Willie Frank Clayton Dennis, who was our state representative. And yes, I'll call all of her names because I am here because of her. To this day, I won't drink anything out of a cup and have it on a photo because she'd always told me people can say you have anything in that cup so you don't do it. And she told me that as a child, and the reason I bring up Mrs. Dennis is because she allowed me to flourish. She wanted me to be a speaker with the NAACP, and I rose to becoming president of the Florida State Conference of Youth Councils for NAACP through Mrs. Dennis's leadership. But I bring that up because some of the things that I learned through my exploration of life, as I got to the point that I am now, it came from people like Mrs. Dennis, people like Ronnie Ferguson, who was the president of the Jacksonville Urban League. And so being in the space and understanding that, it made me appreciate the written word and the spoken word. And I guess more than anything else, who I look to most is my mother and grandmother. My grandmother, if I can, and here, I just taught, as some of you may or may not know, and I have an outline, but I really wanted to let the questions lead this, so we're gonna get to questions as soon as I can. And for those of you that are watching online, I guess I've kind of been molded into a college professor space now that I've been teaching on the collegiate level for more than 5 years. So I'm always looking for questions because I teach Socratically. So if those of you are watching at home, I know I saw 20 or 30, and some of my students, thank you all. Just feel free to type your questions in the box below, and they'll be sending them to me, and I'll be looking at your questions and answering them real time. So if you have a question, jump in, and I will be more than happy to answer those questions. I'll be looking and watching online with you. So the thing is, my grandmother was the reason I brought that up, this book is a book of stories. Poems are stories. They're just stories told in a different way, right? They're still stories. They're just creatively done stories. So I am a professor of communications at Edward Waters College, and this semester I taught a course called Storied, based on the book, right? We use this book and Zora Neale Hurston's book, Every Tongue Got to Confess, where she uses Negro dialects to tell the stories of the time. And it leads me to why I started telling stories. I remember from my earliest upbringing, my grandmother, who was a little girl in Stark, Florida, and she was a little country girl in Stark, but she always had a belief in possibility. And Stark was where our family settled after slavery. And the beauty is, I was just telling someone, I went to visit the cemetery down in Stark recently, that's our family cemetery. I can literally walk you from the Civil War to now through my family in the cemetery. I can take you from grave to grave and show you everybody. Now, the good part is I can do that. The bad part is most of my family is there. So there is a trade-off to that. But I am thankful that I have the opportunity and the posterity that has been granted to me and the ancestry to be able to have that lineage and that connection and share it with those who will come after me. But my grandmother, in her time in Stark, believed, understood, and knew that education was the only way out. And I can't wait to tell even more of these stories. My grandmother's sister, and I can tell it now because they're all deceased and they can only visit me in my dreams. My grandmother's sister was a madam. She was a madam and a spiritualist. Her brother was a bootlegger. And as you know, that was the drugs of the time back at the turn of the century. And so because of being a bootlegger and being a madam, they weren't the best in society. She had another brother who was a professor. And my grandmother understood, being the oldest of her siblings, that she, or the second oldest of her siblings, she had a belief to understand that she didn't have to do things a certain way. And I don't know where she found the fortitude, but this woman who grew up with infantile paralysis and lived in this tiny town where all they had was strawberries and only had 8th grade to go to, that was the highest educational opportunity they had, rose to not only achieve a master's degree, but to become a principal at a school, and then leave the state of Florida, go to Georgia, and I still have her teaching certificate from the Fargo, Georgia Colored School District. And my mom was writing a book before her passing about that, but my grandmother went there, and they were teaching school in a wooden school in a church. And my grandmother did what we now know is a capital campaign. But she pulled everyone together and got the 10 cents, as she said, or 50 cents or whatever, and they built a schoolhouse for the children, right? She did that. And so because of that lineage and the stories that I heard, not just from her, but from the people who were there, those stories are the reason why I write and why I wrote. And the lineage goes on. My grandmother also had 13 miscarriages. 13. And then, after deciding to adopt and starting to raise a child and continue her family, my grandfather was a sleeping car porter. She was a teacher. They did well for themselves right here in Jacksonville. And the next thing you know, what she thought was a tumor happened to be my mother. And so the beauty of the stories that come mean that there's purpose in everything we do. Right? And that's what the stories are about. So when I heard the story of how my grandmother got to the place that she did, how she chose education while her other brothers and sisters chose by any means necessary, it was a lesson for me. It was a story to be told for me. And then as I got even deeper and understood on the miscarriage situation, the infantile paralysis, grandmother having accidents or things, but she got to a space where eventually she had a child who only had one child, me. And my mother was told when she was a young woman that after marriage, she'd never have any children. They told her she wouldn't have any children, and she popped this out. And I was a 10-pound baby, so I do understand why she never had any more kids after me. She told me that later as we laughed as adults. She said, yeah, you try pushing something 10 pounds out of you and see if you want to have any more children. So I'm honored to be able to share those stories. And so my mother, my grandmother was a scientist, and she taught science besides being a leader in the school system. But my mother had this love of words. And her love of words inspired me more than I knew then, but it gave me the foundation to be able to write all that I do now. I consider myself, I know a book I read by Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. Amazing book if you haven't read it. Oprah does a great talk about the book on a class, on one of her classes, but it is an amazing book. And so the beauty of it is kind of finding why you're here. And as most of you, I know some of you in this room, I know the many that are watching today, and I can't tell you, there's some friends in my life who tried to categorize me, who tried to say that, oh, that's Rahman, the news anchor. Oh, no, that's Rahman, the reporter. Oh, wait a minute, no, that's Rahman, the college professor. Oh, no, that's Rahman, the actor. Yeah, no, that's Rahman, the show host. But wait a minute, no, wasn't he an elected official? That's Rahman, the commissioner. But wait, but that's Rahman, the college professor. And it goes on and on and on. And one of the things that I had to understand, and being able to read that book helped me to get it, is I am all of those things collectively. I am none of those things individually. Those things all compose me, but none of them define me. So once I understood that, it helped me to refine and define who I was as a person, and that is a storyteller. My job here is to tell stories. So it doesn't matter if I tell the story as an actor on a Broadway show, as I've done, right? It doesn't matter if I tell the story as a news anchor on television, which I've done. It doesn't matter if I tell the story as an actor on TV or film or movies. It doesn't matter how I tell the story, but the purpose is that I tell the story. And that's what this is about. That's why I write. And so I didn't realize my mother, as much of an inspiration as she had, my mother always wanted to be an actor professionally. And she was a dynamic actor. She was, and I know I've had some opportunities to do some great roles around the world, but when I tell you that sister could interpret, I saw her, I cannot get it out of my mind watching my mother do Lady Macbeth from the play Macbeth. And my mom went to undergrad at University of Miami, and I saw her do the part where Lady Macbeth was having the schizophrenic scenes and she was going back and forth, and I broke down. I remember seeing her do that. I tell you that to say, yeah, I'm a pretty decent actor. I can pull some characters out on stage, but there's nothing like Ida Ross Johnson. And so that's why I'm here, because she told those stories. And I remember her saying, one of the things I have to say as I begin to start, at least reading and then taking some questions, one of the things that is so interesting to me is that the thing, as I reflect back, and we'll talk about it through the book, but my mother transitioned last year. And so for me, stopping all that I was doing, right, for her, with her, around my career, just to focus on her, I had to think, as I began to think there's a possibility that she won't be here. And since she's gone, how do I reflect on her? Do I look and say, and I know all of us who have lost parents and loved ones. That's the letting go part of the book, and I'll explain it in a second. But we look at that and say, what is the reflection? How will we reflect? What will we take from the things that they left? And the one thing that I believe, and I don't know all of your parents, but I do know, Willeen, I know yours, so I know you and I are on the same page right there, because it's one thing that your mama did for me, and I know she did for you. The one thing, I don't care about money or cars or any of that stuff, the one thing that I can say that I know my mother left me that I am most appreciative for is confidence. You can't buy it. You can't duplicate it or replicate it. It's just there when you have a foundation that tells an individual, you belong in the room. And I've never, through my life, through the experiences of, and I'll tell you why some of the poems are written, through the experiences of going on Nickelodeon, and the president, Seema Zargami of Nickelodeon, telling me, well, we've never had a black host of programming before. You're the first. I didn't feel intimidated because I was supposed to be in the room. When I ran for the Duval Soil and Water Conservation District in 1998, and no one knew what the heck that was. And they said, well, I think he got elected to something. 80,000 people voted for something. And I walked in the room like it was the grand high office that oversaw everything of all things. Why? Because I felt like I belonged in the room. And so it reminds me, that was the one, and I'm not saying there are not other things that she gave me, but it's that belief that I belong, that I'm supposed to be here. And I think me as a college professor now, that's the one thing that our students, our young people, our people, period, need to have the belief that they belong in the room, that they belong in this space, in this place. Because if they do, they then respect themselves even more. And so my mother, belonging in the room, giving me that, my mother always wanted to be an actor. And my grandfather, before she got married and had a baby, my grandfather was like, well, now while you waiting to make a movie, who's going to take care of you? That was his thought. Now, it was a different time back then. But Mom decided that she would focus on a career because she loved words so much in speech pathology and audiology. So she was a speech pathologist, audiologist, but for the Duval County school system, and then also in private practice when she retired. And the beauty of that is I didn't understand why I was so in love with linguistics until the more I did, I'm like, look at this wealth. This woman left me this foundation of confidence, this greatness of understanding the love for the written and spoken word, not just in English, in other languages as well, right? Understanding those things gave me the ability and the foundation to do this thing, to create this place and space so that we can move in a different direction and communicate. So it's an exciting moment for me, and I as I was explaining to one of my former students, I talked about changing the temperature in the room. You have to be a change agent when you walk in. And I'm gonna tell you, I was trying to get, and some may know, I've been blessed with a whole lot of aunties and ladies in my life. I was trying to get Sonia Sanchez to write the foreword to my book. And I was, like reaching out, we talked, and she was like, why do you need a foreword? Like, you know what, you got to go through that whole kiss the ring thing. And it got me to thinking, I didn't know that I even had the confidence initially. Because I'm like, why would somebody want to read poems from me, right? Because I had other books that I was going to write. I had other stuff I needed to do, but it's just poems. However, I can't tell you how many times people have said, well, I read this and it changed my life. I had a buddy who is a very well-known musician, Grammy Award nominated and winning musician, who composed something on one of the poems, said, this is amazing, this just should be a song, right? So I had to step out of myself saying no one wanted to see that and say, here's an opportunity for you to tell more stories. Just to tell more stories. Because I've been writing poems, as you'll see, all my life. Most of the poems in here are about 20 years old. But as I've had thousands of poems that I've just written, I never thought I'd share them. But here is the point that I did. But it's about changing the energy in the room. It's like, I tell people, and this is something that I'm sure that maybe you've heard or maybe you haven't, but it's like having coffee. Having coffee. And I heard this story, and I'll share it with you quickly before I start. Coffee is an amazing thing for those that drink it and like it. I love my coffee, and international coffees. And coffees are, the beauty of it is coffee tastes differently depending on what it's in. So if it's in a paper cup versus in a piece of china, even if it's the same coffee, it tastes a little different. So I always want to be one to package the coffee or package the product in such a way, so even if it may not be the best, you're going to say, well, God dog, I haven't seen packaging like that. We have to be change agents in what we do, and I hope in some way that the writing makes me in this space some kind of change agent. I go further in a story to underscore that, not just coffee, but how you react to stimuli that are challenging. For me, as I was telling someone else, and I have these conversations, especially lots with the students who I've fallen in love with, you never know what things that you're going to encounter or experience, but as we all know, how you react to those things is what makes the difference. So I can encounter and experience all these wonderful things, and if I come and every one of them sends me off the hinge, then that gets me closer to a stroke, gets me closer to psychosis, all of those things. But if I react by measuring them and asking myself first and foremost, what did I learn from the experience? That's when the change occurs. And so it's the story that I learned to underscore that is boiling water. A man was trying to explain to his son about being strong in circumstances. And so he put a pot of water on the stove until it boiled. And the boiling water, it was an example of something that was a harsh stimulus. And he took some noodles, some spaghetti, he put it in the boiling water. Yeah. And when he put the spaghetti in the boiling water, what happened? Just folded. Got wet, just went all down. He said, look, son, if I had taken that same handful of noodles and I just put too much tension and pressure on it, the noodles would break. So they were brittle and broke. I put them in the water and they just folded. So the man then took an egg. He had more boiling water. He took the egg. He put the egg in the boiling water. And after a while, he took the egg out. He said, now, what's the difference? And I said, well, this is a boiled egg. He said, I want you to see deeper than that. When I put the egg in the water, the inside was pliable and malleable like our heart. It was liquid. It was moving around. But the moment it went into the harsh reality of the circumstance, it hardened. It got hard. It changed irrevocably. And then the man took his final example. He took coffee and put it in the boiling water. And he said, well, son, what do we have? And the boy said, oh, well, Dad, that's coffee. He said, no. That's an example of something that changes the circumstances that it was put into. You see, every one of those other things that we put in, the circumstances of those things, they were changed by that harsh thing, the boiling water. But when coffee was put into that harsh stimulus, it changed the circumstances around it. So we have to have that space to be that coffee, to change the thing around us and to present it properly so that when we do, we can make change that's sustainable. I want to start by, in this space, at the prologue, and a few things I want to share. In the prologue, I talk about my mother, but my godmother, Rita Perry, and you'll see this in paragraph 4, was the founder of the Jacksonville Free Press newspaper. And understanding my love for reading, she encouraged me to write, and for several years, I wrote a weekly column called Youthquake. Who knew that that column would lead to me writing at the Florida Times-Union, the paper? And I'll tell you quickly, an aside, how we got that. It was myself, about 4 other teens. We didn't know what we was doing. You know, sometimes youth is so amazing because we're so dumb that we could just go and march and do all kinds of things. We went into, at the time, Carl Cannon was the publisher of the Times-Union. And we went into Mr. Cannon's office, me and us young people, and we were like, we don't see enough representation of young people in the Florida Times-Union. We said that to the publisher. I don't know if today I would walk into the publisher of the Times-Union and say, we don't see this or we don't see that. But we had the fortitude to belong in the room, and we went to Mr. Cannon. By the time we left that meeting, we had created what was called at that time the teen wrap. The little teen section wrapped around the outside of the newspaper every Wednesday. Now, the beauty of it, we had a new section, and I also had an after-school job that I didn't know was coming. That was my job, writing for the Times-Union. So the creative writing spark didn't really hit me, however, until my senior year of high school. I was taking AP Lit and Comp, and my teacher was Helen D. McAfee. And Miss McAfee required the entire class to write a senior thesis, a paper. And she wanted us to write and create what was called a literary cavalcade. Now, the cavalcade had to include reviews of books, short stories, and poems, and you also had to write several poems of your own. Now, I didn't think I was a poet. I didn't think I was a writer. The beauty is my mother had been encouraging me to keep journals since I was 8 years old. So I had journals that were there. So I knew what to do, but Miss McAfee helped me to write with a purpose, and I think that was what was important. Right? I had to understand that not only did I belong in the room, but there was a purpose for the things that I had to say. And sometimes, I didn't need to say them out loud. I just needed to write them. They needed to be encapsulated in a way that would be there in posterity. So Ms. McAfee taught us how. Our African-American studies teacher, Coach Charles Fox Lee, gave us the confidence to believe we could, and we did. And who knew, after I left the school and went on to pursue a career in radio and television and news, that I never forgot that I was a creator. And so over the years, in the privacy of stolen moments, I would write on napkins, in journals, and yes, on the pages of my heart. And then, of course, my mother passed away in 2019, and that moment sparked a release to share my work with the world. I had not planned on it. And so during my life, I'd often heard this quote. This is why the book is named what it is. I thought the quote was from Buddha, and it said that in the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How well did you live? And how deeply did you let go? And so as I have become in somewhat of academic circles, I was doing some research and found out that it really wasn't Buddha who said that. It was Jack Cornfield in the Little Buddha instruction book. But it was still good advice nonetheless. And those words, again, I have to repeat them because they're so powerful. How well did you love? How well did you live? And how fully did you let go? Because this experience that we're in is temporal. All the things that we experience, the wealth and the accolades and the degrees and the titles, it's all temporal. So eventually it has to be let go. And the problem that we end up hanging on to it and have to turn to drugs or addictions or whatever is because we don't try and don't purposefully let go. So Living, Loving, Letting Go is compiled through the prism of these major moments in the journey of my life. And so, in the words of one of my favorite writers, Audre Lorde. Audre is such a fabulous poet, and she had this poem for each of you. And that's the name of the poem, For Each of You. And I quote it. It says, "Love as deeply as if it were forever, knowing that nothing lasts eternal." At least on this side. I have to add my little piece to it, at least on this side. So here's to experiencing that fullness of eternal love. I have a few poems that I'll share, and then I'll weave in and out, get your questions. I know some people online have questions, so if you have questions about any of the poems in the book, and again, let me say this, I have not said it yet. It's so interesting that as that people actually bought my book. When I did, I'm like, really, when I got it, there was this moment, right? And I'll tell you, when the book came, and I said, okay, it's done, right? And let me tell you, publishing a book in a pandemic probably wasn't the best idea, I thought initially, but you know what? It worked. And that's the belief that everything happens as it should. This book came exactly when it should. I said I was gonna do it when my mother passed. It took time, things happened. I had a publisher that had given me this, like, hey, we wanna do this book, and I had a book I was already 3/4 of the way down the road on, right? I have two books I'm working on. One is called Finding Your Ghost. It was based on my master's thesis, Goals, Objectives, Strategies, and Tactics, How to Plan an Event, a Corporate Change, or even your life, using the ghost theory, something I came up with in grad school, Goals, Objectives, Strategies, and Tactics. It's coming out soon. I don't know when, but it's coming out. And then there's the book that touched me most that I can't wait to share. It's called The First of Everything. That book is the one that's probably going to come out next, and I do have a medium-sized publisher for that. And that particular book, The First of Everything, is what I realized after losing my mom. And those of you who've had loss, you can get it. I'm not going to spend every time talking about loss, but it's cathartic. You know, I went to therapy. I wanted to see what it was like, and I was coming up with quotes, and my therapist was like, "Whoa, that sounds good. Let me write that down." I was like, "Wait a minute now. I'm paying you to be here." So I recommend therapy, but you know, you got to make sure you find the right one. But when I got the book and it came there, and I saw it, I'm like, that's me. That's my book. And Mark Little, who's a member of the club, knew that I was publishing a book, and you know, I'd done a decent deal, or so I thought. And Mark said, "Well, why can't you independently publish it? You're smart enough. Create a company." And that's why I'm here tonight, right? Because Mark said, "You can." And it was one of those things, yeah, you know what, I can be a book publisher. But it worked out. And so when people were actually, there was an event and people were buying it and everything just started to fall into place, it was a good space for me to be in, right? And it one of the things, and I'll answer this question quickly, this is a question that just came in from online, is there advice you can give someone who wants to write a poem but who's never written before? There are no rules. That's the advice I give you. And thank you for tuning in. There are no rules. That's the thing. People get into this space. I've had a chance to, as an actor and as a poet and as a writer and a speaker, people think there are these staid rules that you have to stick within. But the only way things change is when you color outside of the lines. When you look at one of the beauties of, I was just meeting with Miss Willeen, and we talked about, she helped me find some academic research work, and we were looking at it. And the beauty is you look at the research that has been done in the past so you can either disprove it or build on it. That's the beauty. You are creating things that have never been there before, or you're taking things that have been there and looking at them through a whole new lens. So give yourself the space to say, let's try something a little different. And so one of my my first, and I'll take questions shortly. One of the first poems is the first poem in the book, which is I won't say you can't have a favorite poem. It's like having a favorite kid, right? Each one of these means something special to me, and of the thousands that are in books, in my journals, each page I write, I don't anymore, like as I write, I try to write in gratitude, right? I try to write in that space. And so the first poem was so special to me. One of my students said, why would you write a poem called Poem? I literally was asked that in class. Like, it's called Poem. That doesn't make any sense. And I said, and that's the beauty of it. It's not supposed to make sense because it's a poem. And you cannot take a poem and encapsulate it into what it is, because it's going to be something different for you versus for me versus for you. And the things we hear in the poem, it's supposed to change energy. And he said, I got it. So I'll share with you this first poem, and I hope you enjoy it. It is simply Poem. Your lips glide over me like the finest silk draped over a polished marble pillar. You create in me the unexpected when you add your nuances to my substance. I am Zydeco music at a party on the bayou in Louisiana. I am a bata sounding the rhythm of the orisha in Cuba. I am the pulse in hip-hop, Bronx, New York, circa 1983. I'm the tongues spoken by grandmama at the small wooden church in Augusta. I'm the haunting voice of the high priestess, foreboding yet beautiful nonetheless, reminding us to be us. I'm all of these things and more when you possess my essence. When I was created, even during my evolution, I thought I would be destined to stay here, being exactly who I was, doing exactly what I did, and just waiting, right here, waiting for who knew what. Your breath of life made my existence manifest, and I tell the story. I am the grief in Mammy's heart as her child is ripped away from her bosom. I am the gaze of the new puppy as he looks at little boy, his new master. I am the clack of the thunder and the flash and the lightning as you hide under your covers. Fear me. I'm the soft smile of the ancestor. No words. Who is closer than she knows to transition. I am the gentle tingle of love's first kiss. I am your poem. Ashe. And so, as you can tell from that poem, it's just each of those experiences, and we could go on, telling like a sip of water or a drop of rain. That's the beauty of capturing words, right? Capturing emotions using words, saying those things that trigger a feeling. And, also to piggyback a little bit on what I said earlier, if you really have never written a poem before and you want to try, just write the words. Write the words. What does it feel when you walk into a room? What does it feel when you experience an experience? And some of the poems are here just because of that. There's a poem I wrote about actor Bea Richards, and there was this pride I felt when I watched. You remember that documentary that Lisa Gay Hamilton did? It's on HBO some years ago about Bea Richards. It's a great documentary if you get a chance to watch it. For those who don't know, Bea was, and I'll share the poem quickly and then I'll start into questions. Bea was Emmy Award winning. I believe she died, I think emphysema, lung cancer, I think it was. But she was what I call unapologetically African. Yeah. Kind of, wide nose, kinky hair, untraditional beauty, but just gorgeous and stately. And so she opened an actor's studio in LA. And I believe Bea was from Mississippi. And she went to LA, she created this space for teaching actors. And there was this regality about her. And so Lisa Gay Hamilton, who you may remember from, I think she was on LA Law. Remember the young lady from LA Law with the short natural back then? That's Lisa. She's a fabulous actor, producer, director. Lisa did this documentary about her, and I saw it, and I was moved. like I was almost moved to tears, and the movement was just, it was a movement of pride. Here we go again, pride. I was so proud to be, even though I had only met Miss Richards once, I was proud to have known and been in her presence. And so I wrote this poem. It's poem 32 in the movement on letting go. Four Emmy Award-winning activist, teacher, and philosopher Bea Richards. On the screen, I saw her dignity. The stage revealed her grace. I knew not how she touched me, but Lisa brought it home. She didn't allow constrictions to her life or her existence. She had to just be. From Mississippi to the height of LA, she reigned supreme, teaching her art and preaching her art, living her art, being who she was. She said, "I'll never apologize for being me." Awards she was happy to receive, but more than that, her reward was living life, teaching others and the time, the struggle, and because she took no nonsense, her trials were doubled. But she had to be, the bee that she should, to share her love she promised she would. She was more than ordinary, living contrary to the beliefs. Wide nose, dark skin, kinky hair. She had unapologetic African beauty. To meet her was a treat, and the path she was always ready to teach. It was easy for her, for all she had to do was be. The black woman spoke. And it was, if you had met her, and go look at some of her others, Bea Richards, if you hadn't seen any of her movies, it's a treat to see her. And she played all kinds of roles. And I think, as in the words of Paul Laurence Dunbar, we wear the mask. We're always playing roles. So it's important, you know, when they talk about, oh, people of color as actors, well, we've always been actors. It's just, you know, now we're kind of getting recognized for it a little bit, but we've had to maneuver in certain situations. And, you know, when I speak of him, I also think of when I told you in the beginning, you know, all of the titles and hats I've had or wear or flirt in and out of. I have a mural in my home, and it is something that probably means the most to me. It's a mural of Paul Robeson. It's, I got it, I lived in Philadelphia for a while, and Paul Robeson was the epitome of Renaissance man, right? He could sing, he could dance, he could act, he was a football player, he was a lawyer, he had like more degrees than a thermometer. And he did it all with class, and he didn't allow anybody, even at a time when his political beliefs didn't reconcile with the country and they labeled him a communist, he still said, I have to do what is right for my people, like with Josephine Baker and James Baldwin and other celebrities of that time who said, even though it's going to hurt me, even Zora, same way, even though it's going to hurt me, Zora Neale Hurston, even though it's going to hurt me and I'm not gonna have the notoriety or have whatever, I gotta do this. There's a conviction within me, so I can't be constrained in that way. And so I have that mural of Paul Robeson. It's a beautiful picture that I found just to remind me, just to make that reminder that you can do it, but you have to do it for the right reason. Are there any questions before we move on? Any questions from the audience? Any questions? Sid, I know, and thank you so much to everybody from the Media Conclave. I know, Cedric, you're over there producing like crazy, and everybody that's out there, for those of you that are joining, I see you coming in. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat below, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. I hope I have an answer. I don't know. We'll see. But are there any questions from the audience here yet? If not, we can keep rolling. Okay. So how many of you know Dennis Stewart? Anybody know Dennis Stewart? Okay, so Dennis was, for those that don't know, Dennis was a local, I can't just call Dennis a chef, right? Dennis was like a force. There's a picture somewhere with me, and I met Maya Angelou for the first time when I was probably 10, 12, and I was in the McKnight Achievers, and we met. My first time meeting Auntie Maya was at the library on, come on, where's the library on the east side? It's closed down now. Remember, on Pearl Street. There used to be a public library on, it's still there. They had closed the building at one point. It's okay. Didn't they close the building for a while? Something. Okay, but it's Library on Pearls, and there's a picture. I literally got it with me first time meeting Auntie Maya and giving her a cake, and the cake was made by Dennis Stewart. I was and she's standing there and we talk, and that's how I got my initial introduction to her. Mr. Stewart was and for those that don't know, he was a wonderful holistic chef. He was on First Coast News, now First Coast News, but Channel 12 for years and years and years, and he would come up with these amazing culinary delights that were also healthy because the food was good, but we had problems, especially as people of color. We needed to eat healthier, and Dennis was a proponent of that. I grew up with his son Eros, his daughter Cherub, all his nieces and nephews. They were community, his family, his mom everybody was around. We were all family. And so I'd known him all my life. And quite interesting, I remember before Dennis got sick, my birthday is May 26th, right? And so usually, for the last, now I'm gonna date myself a little bit, being from Jacksonville. I remember Mayport and all that jazz back in the day, okay? And I could tell y'all some stories. I don't even tell you all the stories. As a little kid, my mom was a radio personality. She was on ERD? Mom was on ERD here. So we're talking 40 years ago. Is that right? Is it 40? Okay, so ERD and back in the day with Captain Groovy and that crew. Mom was over entertainment news. That was her thing, national entertainment news. Ida Ross on entertainment news. And so I remember going to Mayport and all that jazz, and I remember this very big, busty woman with a big old voice. And she would come and sing every year. And she would bring these plates of greens and cornbread and all this food, and I would sit in this woman's lap and just eat, and she would say, "That's my baby." Every year I would go. I didn't know who this woman was. I just know she had good food. It was Della Reese. She would come every year to the Mayport Jazz, when it was Mayport and all that jazz, and it was like, as I look back over my life, I felt kind of Forrest Gumpian. All these experiences, that I'm having. And so I got to know her, and I remember it's like, as I look back, like, I was blessed with a whole lot of really rich experiences. And so, but moving the Jazz Festival to Jacksonville, it's usually on Memorial Day weekend, May 26th. It's my birthday weekend. So I remember this Memorial Day specifically because I got a shout out from Sheila E. Sheila E. was the, performer. So I'm sitting there, and she gave me a birthday shout out at the Jazz Festival. So I'm living on cloud nine. And Dennis Stewart was there. Dennis and his wife, Linda, and Cherub, and Eros, and the whole family, everybody was there. Michael Stewart, everybody was there. And so we're just dancing. I got this video. Dennis is up like they had a Trombone Shorty. After Sheila E., Trombone Shorty came up. And Trombone Shorty is just doing his Trombone Shorty thing. And Dennis is over here doing this and playing, and we just having just an amazing time. And we just partied, like literally outside in downtown Jacksonville in front of the courthouse. And then I got a call a few weeks later. What I didn't know is that that was the May 26th, my birthday. I was scheduled to give the commencement address, but for me it was a big thing for my high school, Reebok Senior High School, on the 30th. And it was, come on, it's your high school. To be invited to come back and give a commencement address in front of, I think it was like 4,000 or 5,000 people there, it was a blessing. And I remember I didn't go to dinner or didn't do anything afterward because I got a call from my mother as soon as I walked off stage speaking that I needed to come to the hospital. And that was the beginning of where it started. There was a call to let me know that something was wrong. And I know about a week later after that, I got a call from Eros because for Dennis, something was wrong. And my mother and Dennis both my mother was vegan and organic, and, she did all the things you're supposed to do health-wise. And much healthier than me. Every time, sometimes the devil gets into me when the Krispy Kreme sign come on, and so I have to try to move, But she and Dennis, they would see each other regularly, and all of them, she was friends with Linda, and they would see each other at Native Son. They would go to the Native Son food store. And so we'd see, and as Dennis got weaker and my mom got weaker, I would see them in the store kind of prop each other up. And they were walking this path together. And I was doing the alternative stuff that I knew. Cherub and Eros and Linda were doing the alternative stuff that they knew. And I remember one of the conversations we had with Dennis. Dennis had gone to a wellness kind of camp. He didn't want to do chemo, right? He did not want to do it. And my mother was the same way, but I tend to be somewhat convincing sometimes. You know, I was like, look, Mom, I'm not ready. I need you to, just take whatever they take, Nevertheless, I remember him saying that while he was at this, I believe it was in Arizona, while he was at this space, there was a hummingbird that would visit Dennis on a daily basis. And the hummingbird would just come by and just light on the window outside of the room where he was. And it would just, flit and then go away. And then flit and then go away. It was like a thing. And so Dennis said, when I would ask him, how are you doing? He would say, the hummingbird said it'll be okay. He literally said it. Like every time I would see him in the store. And so I remember one time my mom wasn't there. I said, how's your mom? He was like, I said, she's doing well. I said, how are you? He said, the hummingbird said it'll be okay. Well, my mother passed away, and I got the call about 2 days later, Dennis passed away. And it was interesting how they were both, to me, it was such a wonderful experience. They were both kind of helping each other to the finish line. She would ask me, have you talked to Dennis? He would ask, well, how is Ida or he would call. He would literally, on his sick bed, call the house. I remember I got home one day to, Mom's, and I was going to take her out. She's like, we need to go to Dennis's house. I'm like, Mom, what could possibly be at Dennis's house that we need to go over there on the other side of town for? Dennis had made some kind of special organic salad that when she ate it was going to just take everything away and heal her from the inside out. And I said, well, if he can get out of his sick bed to make this salad with this avocado, and he said, if you eat it, it's going to change your life. I said, if he can drag out of bed to make it, I can go drag over there to pick it up. And so I put my mom in the car, and we went, and she and Dennis chatted outside, and I was able to get the salad for her. And so those little things, though, but he always talked about that hummingbird. And I wanted to be able to tribute to him. I went to his memorial. His family came to my mom's memorial. And I wanted to be able to, to find a way to tribute. And Dennis was cremated and shared at American Beach. What better place to be than American Beach? With Maveen Betch, the beach lady. And so he always talked about the hummingbird. So I share with you number 37, a dirge from Mr. Natural, the hummingbird. The hummingbird spoke gently to the high priest, letting him know that the time was coming. The priest was special in that he would use nature to create healing through food. Drinking sweet nectar, the hummingbird consumed the secrets of a life it had yet to behold, yet it knew. There were signs and omens in the space of being, and the priest could see them all. From the vantage of ascension, he started the journey of knowing and growing and evolving into the ancestral ether. And while they were scared and afraid and worried, he knew it would be fine in time, because the hummingbird said so. Holding the messages of love and connection, the priest prepared, and the bird hummed. From temporal to spiritual, the hummingbird transformed into an interdimensional connection to there. The priest did his part on the journey, helping to prepare others on their way. Don't cry for me. See the journey. Let me be free, he said. The hummingbird said it would be okay. He did his preaching and his sharing and his loving until he heard the call. And then with a breath and a nod, he embraced the pall. He ascended the throne that the hummingbird said would be there, waiting for him. His work there was finally done. His other work had just begun. His loved ones presented what was left to Olokun, and she received him warmly, and he soared. All was okay. All was well. Just like the hummingbird said. I pray that Dennis, he was such a really just a sweet guy. Not that Michael's not sweet, but Michael could be a little devious sometimes. My Uncle Michael, but Dennis Stewart was just, did you call, those of you who are from Jacksonville, and if you're online and you're watching, again, thank you. I see, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I always thought that Michael Stewart was the older brother. Did you all know that Dennis was older than Michael? I never knew that until the funeral, till the day that they buried Dennis Stewart, Mr. Natural. I never, ever knew that. Because, Dennis was like, let's have fun and go carry. Michael was always the more serious ones. That's why I thought that. Love them both, though, and I pray that that poem allows us to remember him well. So history is something that's also very important to me. I want you to share number 29. It's on page 83, but it's number 29, poem 29, Loving Blackness. So this is a poem that the reason it's so special to me is because being who we are and the way we are is so unique. You can't, it reminds me of a Robin Harris joke, and I won't do the blue part of the Robin Harris joke, but Robin Harris said, he's flying on the black airline, and he said the white folk came in on the black airline and was like, well, we don't serve, Negroes here. And he said, well, I don't eat them either. He said, can you imagine something big and black with Jerry curl juice running off the plate? Now, those are the words of Robin Harris. I am not a comedian like Robin Harris is, but there's just something special as from those of us who are members of Greek letter organizations to societal organizations. I remember I had a discussion about, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and I was talking to a colleague who happened to be white at the time, and they were mind blown about the fact that we actually keep in contact with our sorority sisters and fraternity brothers throughout life. And for me, I'm like, how do you not? And I explained the process of how when we go through the organizations, Delta Sigma Theta, AKA, all of them, we are in that for life. And there's some people who actually go through a graduate level process to be a member of the organization. Mind blown. And what I explained to them, I said, if you understand the origins of why the organizations were created, it was a mutual aid society, right? Every one of our 9 illustrious organizations were because they were trying to help people of color stay initially at the founding, in places where we needed some help to be there. We needed to make sure, especially on the guy side, I'm not saying that it didn't take, the AKAs and Deltas and others, but I know for us, for the Kappas and the Alphas, at Indiana University and at Cornell, they didn't want us there. They told us. They would call us names. They would spit on us. There's some lore and legend I've learned through doing research about these organizations. But the beauty is we found ways to get around it. That's the richness of the African American culture. That's the richness of, that's why I had to explain. I had a young lady in class, but we were, having class, and she was, and I try to stay, and not try, I don't. I want all ideas and thought. It's the academy. I want thought and ideas. But the young lady was bashing Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. And she was really just like, well, she's not really black. Okay, what does that mean? That's what the student said to me in class. I didn't get frustrated. What does that mean? Well, but she's not really, she's married to a white man. Yeah, but she dated the black man that didn't want to marry her. So, I mean, so he wanted to marry her. The brother didn't. So, Willie Brown said, I'm good. I'm going to just call a thing a thing. That's where it is. So help me understand, she's a member of the AKA. She's a member of the Lynx. She went to Howard. What you want? What you want? I didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me that and the beauty of it is we come in so many different shapes and sizes and colors and hair textures. I've got cousins, blonde hair, blue eyes. I've also got cousins that you would be like, y'all related? There are the diaspora that includes us. So you can't, as someone said, a person, my student in class said, well, I'm not a person of color. I said, well, I'm all of that. I'm black, African American, and a person of color. I'm going to take it all. I'm going to fit in all of the categories because I appreciate the beauty of this experience. And there are those of us who don't look like us who envy the experiences that we have, who look at the fact. When I explained to someone about, I was on a set doing a commercial recently, and I explained why people, what a chitterling, or as we say, the chitlin, what a chitlin is. I had to explain what you eat the intestines of a hog? Yeah, because it wasn't nothing else. But here is why it then became a delicacy that now you look at as a delicacy. Here is why what was meant for something bad became something that allowed us to survive. And that's the beauty of the African American experience. So that's why I composed Loving Blackness. And this was a year, there was a lot going on. So just follow me on this poem. It's about loving blackness. One morning, I woke up and discovered I was black. Now, it's not as if I'd wondered before, but this particular morning I was convinced and convicted to atone my roots, to rediscover the fact that I was black. I was black like tribal drums of yesteryear. Boom, da da boom, da boom, boom, da da boom, da boom. The connection to my blackness gave me understanding of their mysterious language. The talk of the drum, a confirmation of my blackness. I was black like songs of the ancestors sang to powerful deities controlling the universe. O batalata winnie winnie sede ude obala iya fedele. I understood the songs and could feel the chants to Shango and Yemai and Oshun. I thanked Eshu for leaving me be, the music of the ancestors, a confirmation of my blackness. I be black like the chastised poetry of Phyllis Wheatley. Couldn't say what she really wanted to say, because Mrs. wouldn't teach her all the things in this new tongue, so she say what they want to hear. 'Twas mercy that brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolic dye. Remember, Christians, Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and join the angelic train. The chastity of Phyllis Wheatley, a confirmation of my blackness. I be black like silence. The silence my family endured, huddled in the bosom of Jesus through the middle passage, awaiting who knew what, the silence of suffering, a confirmation of my blackness. I be black like the Negro spirituals sang by a mammy who had just had enough. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. A testament of my blackness still. I be black like the blues songs that told of the pain and promises of the future. I be sad from the blues, but happy from the music, like when Muddy say, got my mojo working bodied, just don't work on you. I love you, woman. Still my blackness. I be black like the speeches of Jordan and King and Jesse, black like the action of Garvey, black like the conviction of Chisholm, black like the boldness of Tavis and the confidence of Angela Davis and Rye. Man, I be black and all that's me. Black like the jokes of Pryor and Murphy. Black like the talk of Robin Harris. Like when he say, woman goes to a store and says to the sales lady, I'd like to see a dress that fits you. The sales lady says, I'd like to see a dress that fits you too. I be black like laughter. And that too is my blackness. I be black like Neo Soul, Jill Scott, D'Angelo, and Erykah Badu with the roots in tow, talking about where is Reese, where is grandfather Prince, and in comes Prince, hand in hand with Ndombi, followed by Lucy Pearl, and who's in that group, but they still jam. I be black like, and if you don't want to be down with me, you don't want to be from my apple tree. I be black, and that is me. I be black beyond belief. Black beyond comprehension. I'm your Negro, I'm your nigger, I'm your Cafford, I'm your color, I'm your African American, I'll be your boy, and in some cases when you catch me wrong, I'll be a sap-sucking so-and-so. I'm bad and black with a pot belly and a skin-tight shirt, because you know we will. Or a six-pack and baggy jeans. Bad because I'll take a butt-whipping like Tyson and still keep talking stuff. Bad playing like Venus and Serena, so what, you sick of us? We gonna win again. Bad like Leroy Butler running and jumping and playing and tagging. One day I woke up and discovered that I was black, still learning what it means, but so happy to be me. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Said we got anything I need to answer on your end? Ooh, hoo, hoo. So, do you know who it's about? Can you surmise? I actually shared it in class. It is exactly her, Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman. So I love Phyllis Hyman was just this, I can't even just call her just a chanteuse or a singer or a, when I got to, she was so amazing, right? I wanted to go when I moved to Philly. I went by, her place. I went, she just, I don't know, there's something about Phyllis Hyman that spoke to me. Was it as magical as it looked from what I was a kid when she took a life, but was it as magical? Yeah. But you felt that, just this statuesque woman that and regal and gorgeous and couldn't find love. Just could not. I mean, love eluded her, and everywhere she looked, I read her story. I looked at the unsung. I went back and looked at some of her writings, and you can even listen to the "I Refuse to Be Lonely," and even there was this sadness in her voice. There was this sadness every time you heard her, and so there's an artist by the name of Ndambi. And I think, Cedric, do you still have that track? And I'll send it to you, and maybe we'll do Lonely Woman later. I'll send it to you, and you can play it in the thing, right? All right, I'll send it to you. Ndambi is a member of Erykah Badu's band, and Ndambi did this track called Lonely Woman. And they did the song Lonely Woman, and it was just it touched me so much when I heard this song. And all I could hear, it was, and in the song, all she said was, lonely, lonely woman. Only words in the song. She just kept saying lonely woman over and over again. That's it. And Erykah Badu, so ain't no telling what. They may just, tap a bell on the track and it become a song, So when I heard it, and the only thing I kept thinking about was Phyllis Hyman. I kept thinking about that she was looking for, and I've even read like she was trying to do something at the Apollo the night they found her in the hotel room over in New York. She was supposed to go to the Apollo, and she was just like wanting to be loved and wanting to find love and wanting to open up. And it was just this, people weren't ready for her. Even though she was probably one of the most powerful singers of her day, they didn't know what to do with her. Here's come a 7-foot-tall woman who sings, these songs that transport you to other places. They didn't know what to do with her. And so I heard that, and I thought about the one thing that she wanted that maybe could have saved her life was love, right? She wanted love. Even if she had family, there are people that thought she was great, like diehard fans, and even now I'm a fan, but that she did not get that love. So I'm gonna share that poem with you and see if, Cedric, I'll send it to you and let me know when you can find it. But it's that's what prompted it. And I think one of the reasons I wrote it, because I meet, friends, people you talk to, and I am not a philosopher, but I've, at this space in my life, learned a few things. And even as my grandmother would always, I was around old people, as they say, he liked to be around old people. I was around these people that would give me, and Willeen can tell you, I would just follow Miss Dennis foot to foot. Right, I learned so much, things I learned that I use to this day. And I told a friend this, and I didn't realize that it was somewhat philosophy. And then I talked, this is about the journey. My friend was telling me that she went on a date. She had dated this guy. She's like, oh, we went on a date. Oh, I can't wait, because we're going to get married. I know he's going to be the one. I'm going to have about 3 kids, and we're going to do this and do that. And she was just telling me about the marriage that she was going to have to the man that she just went to the movie with. And before I could catch myself, I said, well, how was the movie? Y'all will get that tomorrow. Some of y'all will get, it might take a minute to get that. You are so far ahead in planning on the possibility, you may find out that you pick your nose and he pick his toes and y'all don't work together. But instead of you enjoying the moment and experiencing the journey, you have already moved ahead, and that's what ends up being defeatist for some of us. right? That's the reason why when I ran for I ran for office in 1998. It's like over 20 years ago now, and I ran for Soil and Water Conservation District and won with 80,000 votes on an off-year election, by the way. 80,000 votes across the city. Worked hard to do it. I turned around when my term ended and decided to run for your mother's seat for a state representative. I was endorsed by all the formers. Representative Dennis, Representative Thomas, all the Senator Girardi. I raised more than double what all of the other people combined raised. I'm gonna let that sit again. At 22, 23, I raised double what the other candidates had combined raised. And anybody know anything about politics, you know it takes some money to run. But I never, and Cedric, if you can look that up for me, it's Ndombi Stepper's Mix. It says Ndombi Stepper's Mix. Let me know when you get it. Lonely Woman. I went through this whole process, and this is just to tell you about, understanding and living in the now. So I go through this process, I run, I raise all this money, and I remember my prayer. And I think everything happens for a reason. All of us can say that we know that we're not just here on our power, some higher power somewhere. I don't care what you believe, somebody somewhere else is doing something to keep us afloat. And I remember when I was running for state rep, I'm like, well, should I run for state rep? And I prayed, because that's what I was taught to do. You had a question, you pray about it. And God did not give me an answer. God was like, I ain't got nothing to do with that. That's you do what you want to. I'm like, well, Lord, if thou willeth, I'm asking these questions. I'm like literally praying every day. Now I know when I pray about something, I don't pray about the same thing over and over again. Because that's offensive. That's offensive. If I believe that God, and I'm not a preacher, but if I believe and understand that there is the higher power, and I go to the higher power and I say, here's my issue, then I have the ability, I gotta walk away. I can't stay there and go back and be like, did you check on that, what I had told you about? Because then I am offending the omnipotence, the omnipresence, omniscience of the higher power. So for me, I prayed, I didn't know that. I was young, in my early 20s. So I pray, I'm praying. So finally, I guess God was like, okay, God, this little boy here is just aggravated, right? So I'm praying the same prayer over and over. I'm in Publix on Norwood, over in Gateway. They had just opened it, new and shiny. This old man, never seen him in my life, and he said, oh, you that Johnson boy, ain't you? I was like, yes, sir. And he literally had a conversation with me. He said, I'm proud of you. You're doing things. You out here running in the offices and things. You do a good job, boy. And he gave me a 50-cent piece. But the words he spoke to me, it was my prayer. Like literally the things I had been praying, it was a conversation. And I say so many of us look for the white cloud and the dove to descend and a puff of smoke to come and a unicorn to run out of the corner or something, when sometimes it's just as simple as being available and listening. Just being available, right? And so when he spoke to me and gave me that assurance to run, I never asked to win the race. I just said, well, Lord, I know it's going to take some money, so I just need to raise the money. And the Lord's like, okay, cool. Here you go. And I raised. And I did not win the election, right? Out of all the money that I raised. And I'm like, well, what is, and I'm going to be honest. I'll tell you this story quickly. I was, at the time, I guess it was supposed to be a victory party, but the return watch party was at the Adams Mart downtown. And we were supposed to be watching the election, or at the Hyatt. I think it was a Hyatt by that time. And it was still Adams Mart. We were watching the election returns. I did not win the election. And I got everybody taken care of and, went back up. And I had a room there. And I could look out, and I just remember standing there looking on the water, looking out toward the water. And I was like, you know what, God, I don't have nothing to say to you. I'm going to say my prayers, but you done got me out here and embarrassed me in front of all these people. I don't got nothing to say to you because I asked you you could have said no. You could have said don't run. Now I'm embarrassed. I literally had this conversation with much confidence as I could muster in my early 20s. And I got up the next morning, and I refused to be defeated. And I had a special tie because I knew I was going to win. I walked into it with that confidence. I had this tie, and I put my tie on and my shoes, and I walked from the Adams Mart to Bethel Institutional Church. Pastor Senior was still there, and every day. He wasn't retired. And so I walked down there for, you remember do they still do the Wednesday service at Bethel? The Wednesday noon service. And I walked down there and I went to that Wednesday noon service. And I was outdone. I worked. I'd done everything I was supposed to do. I ran what I thought was a good race. What I didn't realize was people were like, oh, he's 22. He got time. He'll get there. To me, my life had ended. But the beauty was that I was available. I left it all on the table. One of my opponents was now Senate Minority Leader Audrey Gibson, who is my friend, who was there for me when my mother passed away. I was there for her when Dr. Lois passed away. We've become, good friends. But at the time, I remember at 20-some years old, somebody tried to give me a dossier on information on the senator. At the time, just Audrey. And I didn't want to see it. I did not want to see it because I said, I don't know what's in that, but if I got to do whatever that says to win and it hurts somebody else, I don't want to do it. If that's how I got to win, I don't want to win. I didn't know that I had the fortitude at the time to get to that place and in that space. And so I moved in a way from when I lost the election. I remember walking back. Pastor McKissick called me out this particular Wednesday, and he said, you did what you were supposed to do. You could. There's so much more for you to do. He called me out in the middle of his sermon, And so I didn't know why, and I didn't understand it. And so I left when I finished and walked back to get my stuff from the Adams Market, and I was headed home. And I remember standing there. This was the next day after the election on Wednesday, and I looked out onto the St. Johns River. And as you said so eloquently about taking that breath, I always was told sometimes you got to just breathe first. Because when you don't breathe for a moment, you be all huddled up and bound up, and then you do something that you really didn't mean to do. Just take a moment. And so I was standing there at the St. John's, and I breathed. And I heard, you might not believe in it, but I know what I heard. I heard a voice say, the lesson wasn't in the winning. It was in the running. I never told you you'd win. I told you to run. A couple weeks later, and it was like it was like all of the whatever, the animus, anything, it was just melted. Just melted. And there I was standing there by the St. Johns River. Nobody knew. I didn't need to run and let people know, but it was an experience that was life-changing for me. And I went from that space, being in that place of understanding. I didn't quite know why, but I had faith enough to know that there was a reason. And so I left from there. You may remember Jim King was the president of the Florida Senate, and Jim King was very involved. Well, my reason for running for state rep wasn't because I just wanted an office to go to. I was trying to get into my career. It was because I had serious issues with the education funding formula of Florida. There were inequitable dispersions happening even though there's more population in South Florida, the education funding formula was completely, Ms. Dennis fought against it, Representative Fields, all the reps, there was just a horrible education funding formula that was going on in Florida. Senator Hosendorf held up budgets, but they still couldn't get through. Can I tell you that 2 weeks later, Senator King appointed me to the committee to rework the education funding formula in the state of Florida. So the reason why I was running, I got a chance to sit at the table to make the decision, and that change went in. It was the first time that North Florida had been equitably represented in funding. So I was able to sit at the table, get the change done, and then a year later, I ended up on Nickelodeon, which was a life-changing experience as the first black host of primetime programming on the network. So because I was obedient, because I did what I was supposed to do, and I didn't look at, I want to get here or I want to go there. I only looked at, what do I need to do in this space? And I heard Oprah Winfrey say it before, and I look at it this way. What's the next right move? Not the move, some people want 10-year plans and 20-year plans. What do I need to do, right? I can't drink the water until I first take the cap off the bottle. What's the next right move? Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, you had something? Lonely Woman? I am. You got it up? It's queued up? Okay, I'm going to try, because this one is with music, so we're going to see what we can do. Said I don't have an IFB. You got me? Thank you. Sid and I work well together. This got Media Conclave. You can start whenever you're ready. For those that don't know, this is Jacksonville's premier. Can I get some more volume? This is Jacksonville's premier venue when it comes to performances. So check it out. This is Lonely Woman. A lonely woman not ready for a man, frankly, not ready for anything. But where she sit, many longs to stand. Her face beautiful, posture impeccable. Her hair kinky like pre-sheared lamb's wool. The curves of her body rival Isis, the strength of 10 Amazons, and the compassion of a southern mammy. Yet she was a lonely woman trying to protect her heart. No one took the time to see what she was going through. No one knew, no one really knew. And inside she was crying and dying 1,000 times. Deaths from the way that brothers treated her. You see, she was a lady because she chose to be. No one really knew her pain, for her virtues were amazing. If only I had known that she was lonely. She was a lonely woman. Lonely. She was just a lonely woman. So lonely. Just a lonely woman. In the beginning, she was the belle of the ball, like a royal princess, going from person to person, spreading her joy. Like a honeybee pollinating nature's garden, she was. Her beauty was legendary, but to her mother's instructions, she was contrary when she saw him. He was just like her mother described, just like her father warned. Still, he was what she wanted. Her heart skipped a beat and she thought it would make her complete. And in an instant, she imagined love with him. She imagined his love not like others. He was. She imagined his compassion not like others. It was. He was her soulmate, or so she thought. No longer lonely. Her, not lonely at all. It was a lonely woman. She was there and lonely. Lonely woman. A lonely woman just trying to repair her heart. A lonely woman. So it happened. They were together, she and he, making music and melody. It was all she'd hoped it'd be. He touched places inside of her that she never knew existed, and she wanted more. Walking with her man, she felt like a queen as subjects stopped to gaze. She knew this was only a precursor to the night. Dark space, a place where her beauty reigned supreme. A place where she could be the freak she needed to be. Head under toe, over elbow, behind back, just like that. Deep into the annals of ecstasy, almost piercing her lonely soul. No matter what was done, she knew he was the one. But there was something missing. Can't quite place it. Still lonely. Lonely woman. She was a lonely woman, just trying to protect her heart. Lonely woman, trying to protect her heart. So lonely. If only I had known. Now she had invited him into her temple there to love her and cherish her like she knew he could. In her mind, he was her god and she was his goddess. Nightly, they sacrificed to each other with offerings and tributes and promises of the future. The time progressed, the love digressed, there was distress, but there would be thieves in the temple on this night. Beautiful sister out in the jungle making a way to provide, but the entire time she's thinking about the offering that she'll make tonight. Powerful thoughts invade her mind, making her pursue her journey before the appointed time. Making her rise. So she left a place for her sacred space and into the temple she did. Into the antechamber she went, preparing to take a trip on high. But there was another at the altar where she had made so many offerings. There lay another. She was worshiping her God in her temple. On her night, lonely, just lonely, lonely woman. This woman was lonely. She was just a simple, lonely woman trying to protect her heart. Lonely woman. She was calm, poised even, never one to be caught out of style, still a lady. She made herself known, and the ritual ended quickly. You have defiled my temple. You have degraded its sanctity. You've taken my love. Leave here now. And she left, and they left to flee, leaving the woman there to be alone. This was as it was before, not the same way, the same. With sage she smudged, with candles she burned, trying to ease the pain, but it was too much to bear. She reached for the apothecary's cure. She was ready to leave this place, ready to move from this space. A supernumerary few was all it took, and it was no longer. She was no longer lonely. No longer lonely. This lonely woman. If only I had known. Thank you. That was for Phyllis. I can only imagine what she went through, and you know, and there's a poem. It is a little difficult, and I don't have it in the book. If you'd like, I'll share it with you because I do have it. I will tell you, it is I won't call it a sad poem, but I will call it certainly a poem of truth. And like I said, if you want to hear, if there are questions, if you have questions, I'll take them. It's a poem about September 11th. Anybody, what are your memories of September 11th? Yes. You were here in Jacksonville? Okay. Hmm. He told you what happened? Yeah. Yeah. Paid no attention. Yeah. You saw. Yeah. Wow. Any other memories? Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
I'm from New York,
Okay.
and I did not go down to Wall Street, to the World Trade Center that morning. I went to the office that was in Midtown, and it was a good thing that I did, because at my desk at 8:15, we started as business as usual, getting ready. There was a colleague that was in Canada that contacted me.
So you were right there, not knowing what's going on.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would have been down there.
Yeah.
Because I was supposed to go down to that office. I worked at the time for Deutsche Bank. And I was supposed to go down there. But I came to the Midtown office. And my colleague in Canada told me, guys need to see what's going on TV. And we scrambled to get a TV together just to see. And then once I saw, then I was trying to get a hold of my friends that were down there
Yeah.
to make sure that everybody was okay. But it was just a surreal space to be in, because after the towers had come down, it was quiet.
Which in New York,
I mean, it was
But you had you ever heard quiet in New York in your life? Right, like it's,
And people were just like in shock. We were all in shock
yeah.
to just try to figure out what do we do next.
Yeah.
And most of the people, myself and a few others, we headed to a church. I went to St. Patrick's. People were just trying to go to the nearest safe place.
Thank you for sharing that. Any other memories that touch you about? And if again, I don't want to make it. It's to me not sad. It's not. I didn't put it in this book because this particular poem I wrote September 12th, 2011. And Felice, I think you were at this thing because I believe you had not retired yet from at the stadium.
Well, that day when it happened, I was working for the city in the Economic Development Commission.
JEDC, yeah.
Meeting that morning, and someone came in and told us
What happened? But I think this poem that I may or may not share, depending on what y'all want to hear. You were, remember this thing that what is Helen Jackson, Dr. Helen Jackson, Women of Color. Remember they did this September 11th commemoration at the stadium,
Yes.
and I believe because if I remember correctly, you were in uniform. That's what I thought. You had not retired from service yet. Yeah. And so I rarely do this poem because it's very emotional for me. I guess all of the poems that we do, as you can tell, I'm not just gonna sit here and be like la 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 la. If I'm gonna share it with you, I'm gonna give you the emotion and let you know why. This poem is called "The Journey Toward Peace," and it was. I was traveling, and I was on a plane. We were grounded. We didn't know why we got grounded. Clearly, now we know where we get down. So I was in Virginia. I think I was in an airport in Virginia, and I remember watching it on TV. Right, so but for the grace of God, I could have been on the plane that the people, you never know. But the image for me that was most vivid, everybody has their where they were story, but I was watching this thing on CNN, and I saw what I thought were people jumping out of the World Trade Center. And I'm like, now they can't be they're jumping. And then it hit me. How do you choose between death and death? That was where the impetus of this, if you'd like, you want me to share it with you? It's not in the book, but I'm more than happy to share it with you. This is called The Journey Toward Peace. And again, this was written in September 2001. Standing there at the threshold of life and death, I thought back about a few moments before. And there I was at my desk, unaware that seconds from me there were wild and crazed demons ready to take away life and ready to give life of their own in what they would classify as a jihad. Now, although they spoke Arabic, they really didn't know the meaning of the word. Jihad. Of the impending doom, I was unaware. So I sat at my desk, drinking my herbal tea sweetened with honey, no lemon, allowing my thoughts and memories to become one, just to make it through the day. And I thought just for a moment about my surroundings. I looked at these two tall human-built, really superhuman structures. Wow. Monuments to men's haughtiness and petulance. The more I sit here inside of these, I feel just like a machine, lifeless. And I sat and I thought, and I said, I'll write something so I could share with the world. And I began to write because I had a word and I felt it. It was like a cross between the deep boom of nature's necessary thunder and the motion that was felt in the earthquake of 1996. And I was in LA, but wait a minute, earthquake, this is New York, and that was LA. This is impossible. And then I smelled it. I smelled it. It was the smell of burning rubber and burning flesh and burning. And then I experienced it. It was like I was a psychic that had tapped into the unadulterated power of the universe. And I felt the thing that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I knew something was wrong. But in the same instant, I knew that there was nothing I could do. Word came quickly to leave the building, and amid thoughts of my mother and thoughts of my love and of thoughts of my daughter who was yet to be born, I knew I had to get out of this place. Damn me for getting to work on time. So with those around me, I rushed and hurried and rushed as calm as could be around corridors, through halls, downstairs, and, ooh, door too hot, can't go there. So through the other door, I traveled quickly. I run not knowing where I'm going to be, and by the time I see there's nowhere left for me, I can't turn back because fire runs faster than me. And so I picked up the phone to call. I don't know who to call. I don't know what to say. Reverend Brother Deacon Doctor ain't warned me for this shit day. So I stood facing my destiny from both sides. The choice was mine. I looked behind me and I saw my life. I saw my life through the wall of flame that had suddenly come from nowhere. I saw me. I saw the me that I used to be. I saw the me that I am. I saw the me that I would become. I saw all the pain and the joy and the love and the hate and the resentment, the appreciation. I was feeling them and they were beckoning to me. And I, knowing full well that if I embraced them, I embraced pain and the wall of flame. And unlike the phoenix, I couldn't be built up again. And so I looked. And then I looked ahead. And it was cool and calm. The windows were blown out and debris was all around, and all I could see was calm. All I could see was peace. And I saw a bird fly by. I saw a bird fly by. It was peace. I saw peace. Hit the button to dial the number. Wall of flame coming closer. Wish I had more time. Wall of flame coming closer. Mama, I love you. Wall of flame coming closer. Mama, tell him I love him. Wall of flame coming closer. Mama, message ended. Wall of flame coming closer. I looked up and said a prayer. Wall of flame coming closer. Hope he'd pluck me from here. Wall of flame coming closer. Oh, Father. Wall of flame coming closer. I'd ask him to grant me peace. Wall of flame coming closer. The peace I'd known in life that I'd never get. Wall of flame coming closer. Peace, eternal peace. Wall of flame coming closer. Pace, mio Dio. And I knew. Summertime. And the living is easy. Fish are jumping. And the cotton is high. Your dad is rich. And your ma is good looking. But hush, little baby. Don't you cry. And I leapt, and I felt like I was flying. I was floating, I was flying for what seemed to be an eternity. And there was no wall of flame to surround me. And I blessed those who blessed me, and I blessed those who cursed me, and I flew and flew through peace. And as what appeared to be impending doom approached, I felt nothing. And I looked up and looked into the eyes of God. And you ask me why? I will tell you that is I rarely share that poem for obvious reasons. Because for me, it's not something you want all the time. But I wanted the people who were jumping to have a voice. And I just asked, I was like, how do you choose between death and death? And I feel that God allowed me to be able to put their feeling into words. And I honestly don't feel like I wrote that. I know I wrote it. I saw it. It was my handwriting. I saw the wet spots on the page because I was literally crying as I was handwriting this. But I feel as though God allowed one of those people to talk through me, and just so that we can see that there was peace on the other side. And there, even though there was a sacrifice, there was a lot we learned about ourselves, because we were just going about thinking, America's the center of the world and everything's all about us, and not even respecting others. And although I don't think it needed to be as bad as September 11th, and I don't think they understood. I think for us, it gave us a wake-up call. It gave us a wake-up call. And so I'm glad I could share that. Any questions? How much time do I have? Am I running on time? How are we on time? Okay. Do we have anything, Cedric? I haven't been over there. Let's see, I see a note or two. And thank you, everybody. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. He was, for those that she's talking about, the poem is about Mariano Mendez. Good, wasn't he amazing? Uncle Mariano was, he, since I was a kid, he made my suits. He was just the man. And so I was headed out to, I was doing a performance in New York, and I couldn't get there. And I'm like, well, let me do, and who knew? Like, he was, nobody really knew Mom wouldn't make it, but we certainly didn't know that he would not make it either. And I was glad when I called him. I was like, man, I'm so sorry I couldn't make it there. He was like, what you mean you didn't make it? Because I sent a video. And he was like, oh, you was there. And he had, he had that big voice, and I appreciate him, as I grew, getting to know him as an adult. Isn't it so interesting how our parents and uncles and aunties, we see them as larger than life, and then when we get to adulthood, we get in those spaces, and so that was like I was able to tribute to him, So yeah, he was the guy that always, like, the car, like, I don't know how your experience with him besides being a tailor. Before Uncle Mariano started the tailor shop, did you know he taught? Well, you probably knew he taught driver's ed. He's a FAMU grad, Vietnam vet, and he taught driver's ed. And so he was like the car guru of the family. Like, you could not buy a car if Mariano Mendez did not give you the seal of approval for the car. And then he's going to talk about the car and, whatever. And so I remember my first car that I bought without him, and I took it to him to see, and he was like, you did good. And we had the grown man conversation. So real good. Yeah. Thank you for recognizing. I'm going to find it and share it with everybody. Yes, ma'am. Well, so I was honestly just writing. This particular day, I was trying to, this is actually a more modern poem. It's not really a love, because if you notice, it was just, I was writing and I was thinking about, I know I wasn't in a relationship at the time. It was just, I was writing and the love was there, and it's so simple, but I was trying to teach my students how to create video. There's a video I made on YouTube with this poem. But it was just so simple. But I like to use vocal imagery, and although I teach journalism, which is a lot more, there's a lot more parameters to journalism. This was just so simple, and it was for me the space to say, I'm in a place where love is available. Like, I'm here. I miss you, and I don't even know what I miss, but when it's time, I'm ready. And it's simple. It says, I miss the way you used to hold me with your voice and touch me with your energy. You accept me flawed and imperfect and wallowing in the perfection of me. I miss the way you caress my cares and push aside my fears in just a moment. You allow me to be strong and vulnerable without ever losing the essence of my soul. How can I miss you, though, when I've never truly met you? You, like a distant memory presently in front of me. I pour libation to the possibility of our connection in realms of undiscovered passion. I inhale deep and embrace the jasmine of your essence, spicy and sweet and alluring and unique. But I've never touched you, never inhaled you, never seen you, never experienced you. How can it be that I miss one who I don't even know exists, yet I miss you? So that was about absolutely nobody. Thank you, thank you. Here's and that's, I guess, kind of for all the longing spaces and places. There's a couple others. Any other questions? There's one couple as we wind down. And said, just let me know, just if you got anything. The Walking Man. That's number 14. That was actually really big. I was over on Kings Road. There used to be a Church's Chicken across from the African American Chamber of Commerce, and then before that it was the barbershop on Kings Road. Right, it used to be a Church's Chicken, and and no offense to churches, because we all have eaten a piece of Church's or two. Those some big pieces of chicken. I don't know, some huge pieces of chicken, but I remember when I was going to Edward Waters College, we could go get a couple pieces of chicken and eat for a couple days. And so I remember there was this man walking across the street. I don't even know why I was over there, besides to go to churches. And I saw this old man walk across the street, an older gentleman. And it just touched me, like, I don't know, I just had a moment. Like, we don't really appreciate people like we should, I remember when I was running for office for state rep, I had this list, and nobody told me to do this per se. But at the time, Ms. Dennis had left office, Dr. Gerardo was out of office, like a lot of the elected officials, the former Mr. Thomas was out of office, like all these electeds were out of office. I had this list. I don't know why, but I literally went to every former elected official to just talk to them. To just, like, what can you tell me? And one of the reasons I know Dr. Gerardo was like the dean of, what do you call it? Reapportionment. When it was time for the census to come through and then to draw the districts, Dr. Gerardo could draw districts in his sleep. So he might be filling a cavity over here and drawing a district over here because he could draw a district. And so I learned so much from him because I ran in a time where the census numbers were just coming back, so it was going to be reapportionment. But I think we, especially now with the phones and the iPads and all of the distractions, we get in a space where we just don't count the knowledge that has come before. We don't count it at all. And so because of that, I saw this man, and I'll share it with you. I just saw a man walking by, and I paid for his dinner. It's that simple. Number 14, the walking man. The walking man, feeble and bent from years of age, looked insignificant as he crossed the street for his dinner. A two-piece, no pepper from churches. His significance was more than they could fathom, for he was knowledge. I can only imagine the secrets that he kept locked in the vault of his brain. Secrets in youth we try desperately to attain. Knowledge through growth we could only hope to gain, for our paces were too hectic. Running here or going there, doing this and trying that, not taking the time, as tradition said, to gain the knowledge from the elder head. No, not us, not at all. When our elders become elder, we think them feeble and weak and unable to go the distance. We place them in the back of our minds, in the back of our lives, forgetting if we were wise, we would know that the young man is chosen because of his strength, and the elder because he knows the way. Old man's insignificance becomes insignificant to those who have no significance. I'm gonna read that again, because that's my part right there. Old man's insignificance then becomes insignificant to those who have no significance. I attributed this dissension to the lack of intervention of the generation that came before. Yet we wonder why things are so hard, and we wonder why at times we're not smart. But we really shouldn't wonder, because the map we should be using, we neglect. We allow our elders to take their knowledge to the grave. The walking man or the sitting lady, old and feeble with age, possess the keys to secrets eternal that we're forever trying to reach. I was there when the walking man, feeble and bent from years of age, crossed the street for his dinner. As I watched him walk and falter, I felt conviction in his steps, fire still in his eyes. I knew of his importance. I thirsted for his knowledge. He ordered a 2-piece, no pepper. I paid. It was the least I could do to buy his dinner. The walking man. Yes, ma'am. I love it. Thank you.
So I want to thank you so much for your particular poetry, just like with the 9/11 event, you're giving voice to people that actually jumped from the building. Now, you also give voice to, especially in loving, because you have 3 sections. So in loving, you give space and voice to the words that are not said, and it's very beautiful in life as you, and if you're definitely enjoying the journey, sometimes you learn it very young, and I feel fortunate that I enjoyed the journey my whole life, and the old soul, being around persons and definitely benefiting and listening to the older people that talk, and then watching the various relationships. It could have been your parents, could have been aunts and uncles, it could have been your friend's mother and father, and then things that you learned that were happening as time went by, or you learned 10 years later. And sometimes it's that space between the words that were not said. Sometimes it's the words that you want to say and don't know how to say. And when there's loss, then letting go. What you can do, hopefully, is enjoy the fact that you enjoyed the journey, that you did give voice yourself to the persons that you love. And you did not wait until that funeral to buy the flowers. And when I was a little girl, I told myself I'm going to tell everybody while they're alive that I love them. And I mean it. And you give voice. And I love you, Rahman.
I love you. Thank you. You know, it's funny. I'm going to share this as we wind down. My mom, and I don't want anybody to feel pity or sorry in this thing, but I come from a very stoic family. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong or indifferent. It just is. This is the reality of it. So I did not come from a family where they were like, I love you, love you, love you. You know how some of us come from families and you hear it all the time. I never heard it. I never heard my mother or my father say, I love you. And I said that to someone, and they were like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I had an amazing life. Like, I literally were around people that poured into me. Like, you know, there are people who are my family who I never hear. There are people who I hear. Your friend, Auntie Patrica, every time you can't move, I love you. I love you. Know I love you. I love you. Know, she's always going to tell you that she loves you. But there are others. My father and my stepmother was the same way. Every call, I love you, I love you, I love you. I never heard it from my mother or my father or my grandfather, my grandmother. They were just this kind of stoicism, that almost British stoicism that an older generation, maybe it's not everybody, but I did see it a lot in those older people that were striving and had done well for themselves. It was almost, I've got to make them so battle-tested that they can't go through having that soft spot. I don't know what it was. I didn't get a chance to ask them. But I never felt unloved. And so then that juxtaposes the question, is it better to hear it and not feel it? Or, because love to me is more, when I define love, it's less of a feeling and more of a knowing.
And each person is different.
It's different.
Totally different. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever you've enjoyed in your journey. Your journey has been beautiful, totally beautiful.
And here's the thing, before my mother transitioned, She said, I love you. Yeah, it wasn't a moment. It was out of the blue. And I'm not going to go through the whole story, but my mom died in my arms. And she wasn't ill. She just, she was ill, but I'm saying it wasn't like a dramatic moment. She was getting up. I said, hey, I'll help you up. And I went to help her up, and she looked at me and smiled and she was gone. That quick. And I'm sitting there like, hey, chick, what's up? We talked to each other. I said, hey, chick, what you doing? Hey. She was gone. She was gone that quick. And so I gave her eulogy. Don't know how, but I did. And in her eulogy, I said, I think that was her final gift and God's gift to me, because if the power that it took to remove the soul from the body was there and I was touching her when the power came through, then some of it had to touch me. So great things are about to happen. I'm going to be okay. And so that was so even though, and it wasn't that moment, but she had told me a few days, as she was getting, sicker, but she had gotten better after. She said, I love you. I was like, I know, girl, you good. You don't have to tell me that. I love you too, chick. We're having our moment, but it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. That reminded me of that moment. I know we are well over time sometimes. That's what you get for putting a professor up here and a news anchor and a former elected official. We like to talk. If there are any other questions, feel free to call or text or email. I'm just really excited for this journey as Edward Waters College has been. My grandmother graduated from there in 1921. Yeah, and I have a picture of her standing by the Lee Cousins building as she got her diploma, because and at the time there was no it was called Edward Waters College, but they only went to 12th grade. So Stark only had 8th grade. My grandmother caught the Popewood truck over to Jacksonville and stayed with her aunt and uncle so she could go to the school. And then she went to get her undergraduate degree at what was then known as Florida Normal College, which we now know as Florida Memorial University. And at the time, it was in St. Augustine. And I was talking, I was hoping, my grandmother's a little bit older than Mr. Solly Mitchell, but Solly Mitchell went there as well. And he used to ride his bicycle from his house to Florida Normal on a bicycle. So anyway, thank you again. If there are questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them, but I appreciate it. God bless you all. And thank you. Thank you at home.